trying to avoid. So, but I also want to make sure that we have time and space for you, as far as if there's anything that you really on your mind and heart that you would absolutely love to talk about. I want to make sure we do that for you as well.
Thank you. No,
Yeah.
I love, hey, I'm ready. So yeah, you guys let me know and we'll see where this leads us. I mean, my message always stays pretty much the same. I mean, the good news is leadership is leadership, whether you're a dad, whether you run a company, whether you run a platoon of war fighters. At the end of the day, all the intangible things really are the same. You may be a little softer in some areas and a little harder in others, but the basic skills are the same. And if you can rely on those, man, you'll rock across the board.
Oh, I love that, man. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and hit record, and we're just going to dive in.
Okay.
All right. Jason, welcome to the Dad Edge podcast, my friend. Honored to have you back here. Not much, man. Honored to have you back a second time. It's, obviously times right now in the world are crazy. But it's so, and I know we're going to talk about that, but it's good to see you again.
Yeah. Thank you, man. You too. And congratulations. You guys are continuing to grow and crush it. I mean, dads are hungry out there. How can I be a better dad, especially in this world we live in?
Yeah.
It's tough to be a dad. It's tough to be a parent.
Yeah. We were actually talking about that in our community not too long ago of, I think you and I are right around the same age. I might be a bit older than you, but when you and I were kids, and the only way you could actually interact in the outside world was go knock on somebody's door, pick up the phone that was connected to your house, or send a letter in the mail. Now it's like you send a letter in the mail and you actually go to your mailbox and you're like, somebody wrote me something.
Yeah.
It's really weird. Is there something in here?
What's wrong with this?
Yeah. Why didn't they just hit me up on Facebook? Yeah. But it's also an opportunity that we as fathers can actually reconnect and actually have conversations about what it means to lead our families, especially in mad chaos like this. But before we get into any of that, I would, for any of the audience who didn't catch the first show or didn't pick up your phenomenal book, The Trident, let's just talk about your childhood and your background. What was it like growing up for you?
I was really fortunate. I mean, I think there are some special operations guys out there that have pretty hard stories that came from maybe, hard backgrounds, or they came from the streets or anything like that. And, there's an equal amount of us that didn't happen. That didn't happen to me. Although I will say my parents were divorced. My parents divorced at a very young age. I think I was about 3 or 4 when they divorced. And it was different because my dad was the one that actually got custody of us, although stayed close with my mom, visitation, all that. But I grew up kind of bouncing back and forth between the two of them over my young and teenage life. And I'll be honest, I think there were some benefits to that. One, bouncing back and forth gave me an appreciation for, I never wanted to be divorced. I didn't want my kids to have to go through that. But the other thing is it taught me how to make friends easy. It taught me how to go to new places and just figure out how to fit in, and gave me a sense of adventure. So, all of that kind of led to this drive. My dad had been in the Army, not while I was younger, but years before. But my whole family had served in the military. That gave me an appetite to want to serve. And from a young age, that's all I ever wanted to do. My dad told me about the SEAL teams when I was about 14 years old. And I had been fortunate enough to live in the Virgin Islands for a period of time. So I was good in the water. And I just said, man, I looked into these guys and I said, these are some of the best. I mean, I want to do that. And I am the most unlikely person that you would ever pick to do that. I was a scrawny little runt. Back when I was 14, I was about 4'11" and probably weighed 95 pounds soaking wet back then. And I remember telling some people I wanted to be a SEAL, and they knew I was infatuated with the military, but they just laughed me out of the place. But I didn't care. I just said, this was my dream. This is what I'm going after. And I mean, dads, when you're encouraging your kids to go after their dreams, never knock them down. You never know where they're going to go, and you will carry it is or warp you based on the feedback they give you. And I love my dad, But my dad, because I was so small, my dad used to always tell me I was too small to do things. My dad didn't want me to play football. My dad didn't want me to do other things. He was like, no, you're going to be hurt. You're too small. You're too small. You're too small. I heard that so much. I'm 45 years old now. I have accomplished some amazing things in my life. And I still, in the back of my mind, in my subconscious, I'm like, yeah, you're too small to do that, which is the dumbest thing. But I'll tell you, if you're a dad, be very careful of the seeds you plant in your kids, because they'll carry, if you're not careful, they'll carry with them their entire lives. They can overcome them. Obviously, I did. And that fire got set, man. And I just, I went off. I joined the SEAL teams at a very young age, went on, had a pretty amazing career as a young SEAL, traveling down to Central and South America, doing counter drug operations down there. Got a little enamored with myself, and as I as I moved up the ranks and even got commissioned, but got myself in a little bit of trouble, just as sometimes young leaders were a little egotistical, and that humbled me and almost got me in some hot water, almost got me kicked out of the military just from my ego and arrogance. But thankfully, I had some good leaders that believed in me. They saw my potential and they said, hey, we can shape you. We just need to humble you a little bit. So that whole journey kind of follows my book, The Trident, how I accelerated, how I fell, how I walked that walk of coming to understand what it is to be an effective leader. And it gave me a great and very deep appreciation of a study of leadership and what, the rules of leadership that I teach to other people, the rules that I applied to earn back the respect and trust of my teammates and my credibility as a leader. And then to go on and thrive and finish my military career, even after grievous injuries I sustained on the battlefield in Iraq. So since then, I've gone off and just trying to motivate and inspire people and use those principles of leadership. I tell people you can lead from any situation. I don't care what crisis, I don't care what chaos is going on around you. And dads, this is a really important point, because oftentimes we tell ourselves we're in a situation that we don't have the ability to lead or the ability to influence people. And I had learned from the journey when I was on that when I was laying in that hospital bed, even as banged up as I was after I got all shot up, you can even lead from there. Because the most powerful asset you have in any crisis, in any moment where leadership truly kicks in, is your ability to project positivity in the face of negativity, in the face of uncertainty, in the face of chaos. And I had learned that journey so that when I was laying there, my family was like, oh my God, what's going to happen to you? They're talking about cutting off my arm. My face is mangled. They're feeding me through a stomach tube. I'm trached. And I was just like, I'm going to lift everybody else up. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to drive forward. I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. And that's how the sign on the door happened, which a lot of people know me for that sign that I posted on my hospital door. And so it's been an amazing journey. I mean, that is a very compressed timeline of my life and where I'm at. I ran a nonprofit for years. I've run several businesses now. I'm a successful entrepreneur. I'm a successful coach. And all these things just because I continue to lead into it, and I continue to lead, and I continue to set the example. And I try my best to do it in my business. I try my best to do it in my personal life, and I try my best to do it as a parent.
Man. My palms are sweating, man, just listening to that story. And I got chills a few times, just some of the things that you said. There's a couple of things that I just want to acknowledge and appreciate you for. And I know you're a very humble guy, but I want to acknowledge and appreciate where you started from. And that was from a divorced family. And I think everybody has heard the story of the two brothers that was raised by the same alcoholic dad. And one brother went on to, create an amazing family, was a very successful businessman, was a very fulfilled, had a lot of purpose in his life. And, he was successful and he felt good. And then the other brother fell into alcoholism, drugs, didn't make anything of his life. He was divorced. Just everything was a disaster. And both of them had the exact same reason why their lives turned out the way it did. And it was like, you see, I had no choice. I was raised in an environment where my dad was an alcoholic. He was absent. He was also abusive. So I had no choice. But both brothers had the same background, but they made different choices. And the thing that I want to acknowledge and appreciate about you is that you kind of started with that challenge right out of the gate, as I did. And that's something that can truly hold people back, and almost use it as a crutch to be like, see, I really had no chance, but you chose, as you did in the hospital when you wrote that sign, and that sign was absolutely amazing. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I've read the words on that sign that you created outside your hospital bedroom. It's right there. There it is, right
Well,
there in that
this
print.
isn't the actual sign, but I know people were asking about it. I'm trying to get the glare off of it. But yeah, so somebody asked, what did the sign say? So the sign says, attention to all who enter here. If you're coming to this room with sadness or sorrow, don't bother. The wounds that I received, I got in a job that I love, doing it for people I love, defending the freedom of a country I deeply love. I will make a full recovery. What is full? That's the absolute utmost physically I have the ability to recover. And then I'll push that about 20% further through sheer mental tenacity. This room you're about to enter is a room of fun, optimism, and intense rapid regrowth. If you're not prepared for that, go elsewhere. And then we signed at the management, which is just kind of funny. It was kind of a humorous thing, like we needed some credibility. But this is a reproduction. The real sign actually hangs in the wounded ward at Walter Reed Medical Center. And wounded warriors actually go by it before they go to surgery, which is pretty awesome.
God. I didn't know that part of it, and I don't think a lot of the guys who are listening right now, and the guys who are part of this actual podcast, we didn't know that. But that, it just boils down to choice. And if you ask me, and a lot of guys are putting comments in here, so beautiful, so powerful, it's absolutely amazing. But it really boils down to choice. And I think in our situation right now, with the entire world as we know it facing something we've never faced before, it's unprecedented that literally the world is shutting down. We're going to get to that. But where I'd like to segue next is, what does your family look like? Married, I know you've got kids and the whole 9 yards, but share with us what your family looks like.
So today, what my family looks like?
Yeah.
So I'm incredibly blessed, man. I have 3 beautiful kids, smart, talented kids. I have a 20-year-old son who has found his own path, and it's so exciting to see. He is a DJ and music creator, and in the fall, as all this develops, he's going out to a music production school in California. He's been a natural entrepreneur since he's about 15, running his own gigs, and it's just incredible. He was the youngest DJ ever to be hired from the DJ company in this area. They normally don't hire kids under 21, and rightfully so. Like, they never would have hired me when I was 21. And then I have 2 beautiful daughters, 17 and 15, and both of them, my older daughter is a little physical beast. She is huge into fitness and working out and nutrition, and that's the direction she wants to go. And then my youngest daughter is my creative one. She's a musician, plays guitar, sings. And the biggest thing, a lot of people ask, how did your kids turn out so normal after this devastating crisis you had in your life? So when I was injured, my son was 8, and my daughters were 5 and 3. And it is amazing when people have some sort of massive, what I call a life ambush, how kids sometimes come out of the other side damaged. And I'll tell you why. The reason they're damaged is because how the parents dealt with it. And my wife and I, and this is where I'm very, very fortunate. People often ask me, young men say, how do you select the right mate? Well, you got to choose very, very carefully and choose very, very wisely. Oftentimes we rush into a relationship based off sexuality, which is a very important part of relationships. But really what you want to look at is, my wife is my best friend. I love being with her. I enjoy spending time with her. We run our business together. We think alike. We do things alike. And so we're strong in virtually all areas across the board. So I chose very wisely in my mate, my spouse, so that by the time we had these major life crises, we were aligned in the way we raised our kids and the way we managed what happened. We were very in lockstep when all this happened. So there were several things we agreed upon right from the beginning that I think set the stage for success for my kids. One, we were going to stay very calm and positive about everything that happened. Two, I wouldn't let my kids see me until I could get up and walk into the room they were in, and which took almost 4 weeks. I was so weak from blood loss and all the damage that it took me almost 4 weeks. I did not want them to see me in the bed with all the tubes and ICU equipment and all that stuff. And I wanted them to do. They needed to do some reconstruction surgeries to fit. I looked really bad in the beginning. So that was one thing. The other thing that we were fortunate enough, my wife and I decided to keep the kids on their routine. And what a better time right now in the middle of this pandemic that people understand the value of a routine. I see so many people writing about, oh my God, I'm so lost. What day is it? Because everybody's out of their routine. So humans crave structure. Whether you realize it or not, we crave structure, and structure enables us to be able to flow and get things done. So we kept the kids' structure intact. And we were fortunate enough to have family to be able to make that happen. But the kids kept going to school. They kept going to sports. They kept going to dance and all these different things. And I think the combination of all those things enabled our kids to come out of this like, hey, dad suffered these bad injuries, but dad's still dad. Dad still loves us. And, dad looks a little funny now, but he's okay. And I think that's really important, and no different in this crisis right now. Your kids are going to feed off you, and everything that comes out of your mouth, your attitude, and leadership's no different. Your company's going to feed off you. A wartime platoon is going to feed off the leader. They're going to look to you for guidance. And if you are defeated with shoulders slumped and you're just like, oh, we're never going to make it out of there, your kids are going to feed off that energy. If you are maintaining and if you are still doing positive things to move the needle in your life, in your business, personal life, whatever it is, your kids are going to feed off that. And they're going to go, oh, you know what? Hey, dad's positive. So, it's going to be okay. And that was the thing we did with our kids back then. The other thing that parallels back then and what parallels now is we were very realistic with our kids. And I am a huge fan. I'm not a fan of leaders that sugarcoat information. I think you need to give your people and your kids the right information. I've heard some people say, oh, we got to protect our kids. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you give them as much honest feedback and realistic expectations based off their world. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't tell my kids, if it was Ebola, I wouldn't say, yeah, there's a high risk that you're going to get Ebola and all your guts are going to bleed out of your body. I mean, that would terrify a kid. But at the same time, to be able to say, hey, there's a disease that people can catch. The reason we're all staying in is it is contagious. So we're all staying in to protect ourselves. We're taking all the precautions. That's why everybody's doing this. We're playing our part as members of a country. And it was the same thing with my kids. My wife and I said, dad's messed up. His face has been shot. It's going to take, several years to put him back together. We don't know which directions we're going to go yet, but, we're all going to do this together. So I think that was the biggest thing that set the tone for my kids. And now, I mean, man, my kids are older now, and I'm so proud of them and just amazed by them.
I love that presence of, hey, we're gonna stay calm. And it sounds like a mantra that you and your wife have had for a long time, even before things that happened to you in battle, things that are happening now, just life in general. But to remain calm in times like this, I think is huge, because you're right. Our kids absolutely feed off of us, and that can that can be reassuring and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
As far as your response to this, your kids, so you and I are the same age. Your kids are a little bit older than mine, and I got started later, I guess. Like I still have a 4-year-old, Jay. Like
you did start late. We started early, and then we were like, I want to be that grandpa that's skiing down the mountain and outrunning most of the other dads there. That's my goal.
See, by the time my 4-year-old is in high school, they'd be like, is that grandpa or is that dad? That's what I could see.
All the more reason you got to focus on that physical leadership, keep yourself strong so you can crush it with your kids, man.
Well, see, I've got 4 boys, 14, 12, 6, and 4. And I'm a big fitness fanatic. And I always say that I have to stay fit because my energy has to stay high because I've got to keep up with these kids. I mean, last night, to burn off energy, what we've been doing, like last night, we every night we do a theme. And last night was WWE. So we went on Amazon and we bought the wrestling masks and the title belts and we put mattresses out. We blared music and we were just like, it was hilarious. And we were sweating so bad by the time we were done. But yeah, you're right. Trying to keep up with these kids, man. But getting back to staying calm, confident in the face of just uncertainty. What has been the message, the tone, the environment in the Redman house?
So it's for us, when all this started to develop, the first thing I did, and there was a lot of uncertainty. I mean, if you notice when you look at the federal government, and regardless, I try to stay away from politics. People have their views on the world, but regardless of which, there was kind of a little bit of, hey, this isn't that a big deal. And then all of a sudden it kind of caught up and it was like, oh my God, this is a big deal and we need to really take action. So one of the first things I always do is gather intelligence. I mean, that's what I had been trained to do. So I reached out to some of my, doctor friends. I had both civilian friends. I had a civilian friend that is a doctor in New York. So I called her and I said, hey, what do you think about all this? Is this a legitimate concern? And then I had some other SEAL friends that are now doctors. So I called all them and I got the data that I needed, which basically, they all agreed. They said, yes, I don't think we realized how bad this is, but this is about to blow up. So it was at that point that we had a family meeting. When I want to put out word, we have a family meeting. We all sit down. And I told my wife, I said, hey, look, the president's encouraging people to do that. Doctor friends agree. And here was the other big deciding factor for us. So we have 2 high-risk individuals that live in our house. My father-in-law lives with us. He's 65. And my son has both asthma and a hole in his heart. Now, the hole in his heart doesn't stop him from doing everything. For years, we've got the pressures checked and he's good to go. It's a very minor heart defect, but he is a high risk patient with both asthma and a heart abnormality. So I said, we're locking down. We're going into quarantine. And I was fortunate enough that I run my own business to be able to make that call. But I told the kids, I said, hey, it was Sunday. And I said, you got 24 hours, go. If you need to go out and do something, go do it, see your friends, whatever it is. But I said, Monday at 6 p.m., we're going into quarantine. And from that point forward, nobody's coming into the house. Your friends can't come into the house. At least and this has kind of grown, so now it looks like about 15 days. So I've told my kids, if you want to come into the house, if one of your friends wants to come in the house, they have to be quarantined in their own house for 15 days. And I need verification from their parents that their parents aren't going out and coming back in, that they truly are in a quarantine situation before I'll allow anybody into our house. So I just laid it all out. I said, this is what's happening. There's this global pandemic. And, my kids are a little bit older. So, they do see the news. They see things on social media. And I just said, this is what we're doing. And it's been good. The other thing that I talked to them about and things that I'm talking to everybody else is, I said, we're not going to lay around in our pajamas all day, every day. We're going to continue to do things every day. You've got to do at least one thing productive. Now, my kids go to a private school and the private school already implemented at-home training. So my older daughter, the 17-year-old, she's actually Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They have a full day. So they go from 8 o'clock to 3 p.m. and they have bells and everything. Whereas my younger daughter, hers is a little less structured, but they have about 4 hours of work they're doing every day. And then, I told them, I said, hey, we're still going to work out. We're still going to do things around the house, and we're still, we're going to be productive. And then we're going to do things together. So for us, it's funny, you guys did the WWE. My kids are a little bit older. We did Rock Band. We're actually talking about a rock band concert where we take all my son's DJ equipment and we have all the lights and smoke and everything. And we're going to live stream our rock band concert one of these days. So that's what we're doing. I'm just being honest. And here's the other thing. One other component to that. Right now, it's hard, I know, for a lot of business owners because moms and dads that are at home, some are doing homeschool, which I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, I've already expelled one of my kids. And, you know, but if you, humans are both, we crave structure and we crave accomplishing things. We are task driven people. So if you lay around and maybe your business is shut down, maybe you're not able to do anything, or maybe you are, but at the end of the day, you should be doing stuff. Your kids are going to see you do that. And our kids, my wife and I, we pivoted our business. I'm working on everything to be online webinars, to be the online coaching. I'm launching a new online platform. These are all the things we're working on now. And my kids see this. So they see us, oh, well, mom and dad aren't freaking out and sitting around and, oh, woe is me. About the only thing that they're probably seeing that's a little more out of the norm is I typically watch very little news. And the difference, my morning routine now, I get up and I watch the news just to see what the current updates are and what's going on. So that's probably about the only thing that's out of the norm.
I love the simplicity of what you did with the structure in your house. Like you have to do something productive every day. We're not going to sit around in our pajamas. I think that there's a lot to that because you're right. Humans are very task oriented. We need to accomplish things. We need to produce. When we sit around and consume too much or basically don't do anything, that's when a lot of other psychological factors can sort of seep in, like depression and more anxiety. The more time you can sit with your thoughts and you allow them to overcome your mind, worse off you're going to be. So I love that structure portion. Have any of your kids come to you and they're like, hey, dad, like, look, I'm worried now. Like I'm worried about just things that are going on. Like my mind, and maybe they probably don't use these words, but like my mind is starting to get the best of me. I don't really know what to think. I can't see my friends. Like, is this the end of the world? Have you had any conversations like that where you've had to maybe calm them down a little bit?
We haven't yet. And my kids, so my older kids are not worriers. My younger kid is my biggest warrior in the household. I don't know. As a matter of fact, my wife and I sometimes joke that I don't know if she's ours, because neither my wife and I are big warriors. I am a huge fan of plan for the worst, hope for the best, but plan for the worst. So that has not happened, but I will say this. When we had our family meeting and over the next several days, I am a little OCD when it comes to, and this comes from my special operations career. The SEAL teams taught me how to always plan for the worst. So when we would plan a mission, if we were going after a high value target, what is the worst case scenario? Well, one, we obviously get all shot up, but the other thing is we're compromised. If it's a reconnaissance mission, we're deep behind enemy lines, you get compromised, you now have to go on something called evasion and recover. You're basically trying to hide behind enemy lines and work your way back out. Those that know Marcus Luttrell's story, Lone Survivor, that technically is an evasion and escape type scenario that Marcus was doing. That is worst case scenario. So if you plan for all those things, and I look at this because you have a lot of people that say, well, are we at the edge of the apocalypse? So many people, you'll have very idealistic people that will say, oh my God, no, that could never happen. And that's very unrealistic because unfortunately it could happen very quickly. If you look at people who are beating each other up and stabbing people over paper towels or toilet paper, you think about if we accelerate that another 2 months and now there's a lack of food and, unfortunately human beings, when we get down to our most basic levels, we start doing drastic and unpredictable things. So I am prepared for that. I'm not some kind of crazy prepper in any way like that, but my military career prepared me. I have what I call blowout bags. So I have bags that, God forbid, anything happened, I have about 6 weeks worth of food, and food like camping type food that I can take on the go that'll last forever. I have water. I have water purification. I have a lot of weapons. I have basically camping type gear for my family. I have sleeping bags for every member of my family, and it's all in bags and it's ready to go. And I told my kids, I said, listen, it was one of the conversations we had in the family meeting. I said, I don't think we will get to this. I think this is so far fetched, but you never know. And you guys know me. I plan for the worst and I hope for the best. But as long as they know, you know, it puts your kids in a comfort zone. This is why I tell people that if you let people know and you project positivity, you project confidence. And dads, I know for some of you, you don't have the training that I have and stuff like that. So you're like, well, I can't tell my kids that. Well, you can, because you are the leader of your household and you can set that example. You know, you're going to take care of your family. So maybe you don't have everything in place that I do, but at least you can tell them, hey, you know, if things were to get bad, we're going to be fine. We're going to drive forward. And telling people a plan and thinking ahead of plan puts everybody in their comfort zone. I don't care if it's in your company, your family, or, you know, wartime, whatever it is, it puts people in their comfort zone. So I think that took a lot of the anxiety away from my kids, because I was like, it doesn't matter what happens, we're going to be fine. We're going to drive forward. We're prepared. You know, we're ready to go with whatever happens. And I don't think any of that will happen, but God forbid if it did, we'd be ready.
I think for a lot of us, just civilians in general, this has really been a realization of how dependent on the system you are. You know, I mean, I know with our family of 6, before all this, we go to the grocery store 2 or 3 times a week, you know, to keep up with feeding these boys. I won't give detail of what we've done in our house, but we are prepared, and much like you are. And we never were before. And I think when my kids saw my wife and I doing this, they were like, what is going on? And we're like, well, you know what? If anything, this has been just such a tremendous, valuable lesson of how underprepared and dependent we are on everything. This has been it. So lesson for you guys and a lesson for us, right, is to be prepared. It's like the Boy Scout motto, you know, be prepared. And like you said, hope for the best, but you also got to be prepared for the worst. And I think that's a solid message. Jason, I want to give
Larry, can I add one quick
Yeah.
point in there? Just because I know there's some dads right now that are probably listening and you're probably thinking to yourself, oh my God, I'm so unprepared. What the hell do I do? You know, one of the biggest things, I guarantee I have neighbors that are unprepared, and I haven't had a chance to do this yet. It's one of the things I want to do this weekend. I just want to go around house to house to my neighbors. The power of the community is one of the most powerful things we have. Back in the old days, we lived in communities, tribes, whatever you want to call them. But the reason was we were able to protect each other. We were able to lean on each other. You know, hey, there's some kind of weird noise outside in the pasture. Hey, John, you're next door. Is there any way you could come over here and let's take a look at this together? We don't do that anymore. We all live in this virtual world. So what I could encourage you to do is go make those reconnections, you know, obviously keep your distance, you know, so we don't want to infect anybody if that was to happen. But just, I'm going to go by neighbor to neighbor and just say, hey, what's going on? You know, I'm your neighbor, the ones that know me, you know, obviously I'm just going to say, hey, you know, if anything happens, here's my number. Feel free to call me. I'm here for you guys. God forbid anything happened, you know, but if it got to the point there was looting or anything like that, we all need to lean on each other. I'm here for you. And I guarantee you have people around you that are the same. You know, there are individuals, you know, whatever your views are on the Second Amendment, I got to tell you right now, America is the most heavily armed country in the entire world. And God bless the fact that it is, because it's in times like this that all the people out there are like, oh, I don't like guns. Well, guess what? I mean, if things got to the worst, your first responders aren't going to be able to come and help you. And it's going to have to be you taking care of yourself, which is how things were many years ago. So this is where you want to do that. So if you're not prepared, go lend your support. Just tell your neighbors, hey, let's bond together. Here's my number. In case anything happens, you know, because suddenly there'll be bigger problems. But it is the power of the community that is going to make a difference, not you by yourself. It is the team that makes a difference, not the individual.
I would love for you to expand on the power of community, especially right now. And I'm going to ask this question. I'm also going to give my guys here, who we've got 14 of them on this particular call with us who are joining, and I want to give you gentlemen an opportunity to ask Jason some questions. So virtually raise your hand and I'll get to you after this question. But so Jason, we live in a world, I know some of us can't see you, but we live in a world where you keep holding up your cell phone, this is how we communicate. We live in this digital environment. But I also think as a world, we've never been so connected, but we've also have never been so isolated at the same time. And men are absolutely notorious for isolating. And one thing that we always say in this community is isolation is the enemy of excellence. And in this day and age, and what we're facing through right now, what powerful message do you have for, and let's speak to the guy right now he's married, he's got kids, he's sitting there like he's got the fear of God in him, but he feels he has to remain strong, stoic. Someone asks him how he's doing, fine and good. 2 favorite words, fine and good. How's life? Good. How are you? Fine, good. But inside he feels like he's crumbling, and he's afraid to lean into that community, or he's afraid to be a part of community in some way, shape, or form. What message do you have for him?
I would tell him it's never too late, man, to start forging relationships. I mean, I teach something in my new book, Overcome. I teach something called the Pentagon of Peak Performance. And the Pentagon of Peak Performance is 5 key areas that you need to lead yourself to be balanced in your life. And right now is probably one of the best times you could be looking at these 5 key areas. Those 5 key areas are physical leadership, how we take care of ourselves, nutrition, sleep, and fitness. And in the middle of chaos, I've been telling everybody, these are things that you need to continue to do. Mental leadership, reading, expanding your, getting outside of your comfort zone, expanding your education, emotional leadership. So this is calm in the case, in the face of chaos, positivity in the face of negativity. Social leadership, how do we build our rings of influence? And then spiritual leadership. Those are the 5 areas. It's never too late to start if you are weak in one of those areas. So right now, no matter where you are, unless you live out in the boonies in the middle of Montana, but if you live out in the boonies in the middle of Montana, I'm willing to bet you're a little more prepared for the things that are coming, because that type of environment fosters that type of mindset. But if you live in the city and you're like, I don't know any of my neighbors, I don't know what to do, I want to project calm in the chaos, but I have no idea what to do. Go out, knock on the door and just say, hey, look, maintaining my social distance. I'm your neighbor. Things are a little crazy right now, but I just want to let you know that I'm here to help. If you need anything, trying to figure out and start building those relationships, because you never know what's going to happen. Who knows? But people lean on each other. It is the power of community that'll make that difference. It's the power of being part of a team. And when crisis starts to happen, leaders pop up and individuals with key strengths pop up. So maybe you have a guy that's part of your community. He's like an engineer and he knows how to build stuff. And, God knows he's a ham radio operator or whatever it is. There are unique assets that everybody brings to the table as part of the team. And you also have one of those assets. But if you don't get out and talk to people, you're going to be all alone on the island with your family, when the reality is you're alone on an island that has all these other islands about it. We've just kind of self-contained ourselves in this day and age because of this. And this is both a blessing. Larry said it, we've never been more connected than we are right now. So use this as an asset, like something I'm doing every single night during the quarantine. I've been going live on Facebook and on Instagram between 8 and 10 o'clock, for about an hour. And I just go on live and I talk to everybody, and my family comes down and they're part of it. Usually my wife's with me, but we just talk about all the questions that people have, stuff like this. But don't discount the power of that community around you. The power of human interaction is so strong, and especially in a crisis, to be able to rely on real humans, because when a crisis occurs, nobody can come through this phone to help you. It is the real people. It is bodies that can move things, that can help things, that can fight if they have to. That is what you need. So, hey, man, get back out there and build that social leadership.
I love that, man. I want to kick it over. We actually have a question in the chat as we actually stream this live. But I want to give it to any of the men who are on right now to just take yourself off mute. If you've got a question for Jason, we'd love to hear it.
I can see, I got the chat pulled up. So
Yeah,
Jimmy wrote, is there a go-to mantra used when facing anxiety or difficult
that's really good.
times? Something you tell yourself. Yeah, absolutely. Two things. I'm wearing my shirt. I got my two slogans on it. The first slogan is overcome. So it doesn't matter what hardship I'm going through. I just tell myself, dude, you're going to overcome. You are going to drive forward. It doesn't matter what happens. And sometimes people get confused or they get discouraged because maybe you're running a race and suddenly you find yourself dead last, and for whatever reason in your mind you're thinking I should be so much further up, and that's where people will quit because they've allowed themselves to think that they should be further up. Nobody cares, dude. You're still in the race. Keep going. You know, 50 years from now, when people talk about you running that race, you know, hypothetically, if you were to run the Boston Marathon, unless you are a world record holder, unless you came in first, nobody else goes, oh yeah, I came in 323rd in the Boston Marathon. People go, oh wow, you finished the Boston Marathon. Life is no different. So when you start struggling, just focus on overcoming. That's what I focus on. The other thing is get off the X. So the X, this gets pretty deep, but I'll just try and summarize it. The X is any point of incident or attack. Right now, America and all of us are on the X. We use that term in the military as the enemy is on the X, so we take the fight, we want to pin them to the X. If you are ambushed by the enemy, you're on the X. If you have a major incident in life, like a global pandemic, we're all on the X. So the idea is we have to get off the X, because the longer you sit on it and don't do anything, the harder it is to get off the X. So you can get on the X mentally with the negative thoughts. You can get on the X in your routine, or you can get on the X in a major life ambush. But when I'm sometimes struggling and I get into the, you know, as positive as I want to be, if I get into some of those negative thoughts, I tell myself, Jake, get off the X, let's go, drive forward. So.
The thing I want to acknowledge and appreciate about you is, Jimmy said thank you, is the simplicity behind your message and behind your mantra and behind your thought process. The more we overcomplicate anything, the worse it is. Sean, he put something in the chat here as we're streaming through social media, and he said his daughter came to him 2 days ago and she says she doesn't feel like herself. And then she told me that again this morning. Probably wondering how can he help her along? How can he talk her through this?
I would just tell her she's not normal. I mean, I'm sorry. I would just tell her she is not, God, that came out totally wrong. I would tell her that that is not abnormal, that everybody is feeling that way right now, all across the world. Even me, a combat hardened Navy SEAL, I feel out of sorts too. I actually had I had another interview I was supposed to do this morning, and I had put it in my calendar for Friday morning, but we're all so out of sorts that the guy texted me this morning and said, hey, are you ready to go on? And I was like, did something change? I thought it was tomorrow. In my mind, today was still Thursday. So it just goes to show you, and if you tell her that everybody feels out of sorts right now, that that's totally normal. There's nothing wrong with that. But where it gets dangerous is if we allow ourselves to devolve out of our routine so much that, you know, now we're not doing anything productive. Just getting up, if it's nothing more than getting up, taking a shower, putting on clothes and doing one thing. Like I told my kids, I said, man, now's such a great time to do something productive, like that you don't normally have time to do. Like my wife and I totally cleaned our laundry room. It's something that's been needed to be done. We've had laundry baskets of unmatched socks for years, and we finally went through them, and they either had a match or they got thrown out.
Yeah. Oh my God. Dude, not to segue completely off topic, but my wife and I are seriously convinced that our dryer has an evil spirit of some sort, and it sadistically, yeah, it takes one sock and then you go to find it, and then I think we have three baskets full of socks, and we're just
we were the same.
Yeah. Yep. It's like at this point we should just throw them all out or use them as Kleenexes.
Well, that's what we talked about. We have an entire laundry bag now downstairs, and I haven't thrown it out yet because I'm like, we may need this because we're running low on toilet paper.
Right. You never know.
But I would just tell her that's completely normal. And as long as just recommend her do one thing every day that you can, at the end of the day, you can say, you know what, I moved the needle in my life.
Yeah.
Because when people, they will only compound that feeling of abnormality and that feeling of being out of sorts if all they do is focus on the problem and the crisis. You're literally sitting on the X. So get up, get off the X. Let's see, both my daughters have cleaned their closet. My son is producing music. He's been coming up and making videos. My younger daughter took an older guitar, and she's always been really artistic, but she's painting the frets with album covers, which is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So encourage your kids to find things to fill their time that at least makes them productive in some capacity. Those are the things that make us feel normal again when we are accomplishing something.
Amen to that. We got another question in the chat from Jim, actually a good friend of mine from college. I've known him for 25 years. He said, what's been the most difficult challenge you've ever faced besides what happened to you in battle, and how did you overcome it?
I love this question because people automatically assume that the most difficult challenge that I've encountered was my injuries, and it's not. The most difficult challenge I have faced ever in my life was the failure in leadership I had that I talk about in the Trident. That failure in leadership almost got me kicked out of the SEAL teams. I stood before a board with my commanding officer, and I had literally teammates who said, kick him out and take his Trident. I had guys that didn't want to work with me again because they questioned my motivation and they questioned my leadership abilities in combat. And I was almost suicidal. Well, I was suicidal, but thankfully God intervened and I did not make that decision. But it was the absolute worst rock bottom I've ever been in my life. And to climb out of that hole step by step and earn back the trust of the guys, all I wanted to do was leave. I was so ashamed and I felt so ostracized from my own community. Remember, we talked about the power of community. So that road, that 2.5-year period of my life where I slowly had to earn back the respect and really humble myself, come to understand who I was, my strengths and weaknesses, and earn my way back into our community is the hardest road I've ever walked by far. Everything else in my life goes back to that. And I look at it and I said, so when I got injured, I was like, you know what? I had finished that journey about 6 or 7 months prior to being injured. So I was like, I got this. I've been through worse. It's all about staying positive. It's all about putting one foot in front of the other, and I'm going to do the same here. So Jim, fantastic question, but that is the hardest thing I've ever faced. And thankfully I overcame it. When I retired, probably one of the most respected leaders in our community who had been a mentor for me spoke at my retirement ceremony, and he said I was one of the very few people he had ever seen that had damaged himself at the level I did, but came back and left the community highly respected at the level that I did. So it's never too late. It's never too late ever to come back.
Man, Jason, this has been just an unbelievable interview and so timely. We're getting comments on social media, we're getting comments in the chat, and just really appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. Your new book, Overcome, over 100 reviews on Amazon, and 99% of them are 5-star reviews. So that's good on you for that, man. I want to acknowledge that about you. You mentioned a few resources. So for the men who are curious, like, hey, in this time right now, I feel like I may need an online resource of some sort. What is it that you're working on? And is it something our guys can go take a look at now?
Absolutely. So if you go to, I have 2 websites, jasonredman.com. That's kind of my main speaking website. And then getoffx.com is kind of my courses and coaching website. In getoffx.com is my courses. It's new, so I just have 2 that are up right now, but one is a group coaching program called the Overcome Army. And the Overcome Army is for individuals who want to be the best version of themselves. All of us aspire to that, but sometimes we don't have that community to be a part of that encourages us, that we can weigh problems off of. So I have everybody from military members to blue collar workers to medical field to firefighters, everything, that's part of this community. And what it does is it gives you an online course. The starting course is something called 72 Hours to Peak Performance. So it walks you through, am I in a life ambush? Which obviously we're all in a life ambush right now. But some of you may have already been in a life ambush when this started. So it walks you through methodology that I use, something called the REACT methodology to get you off the X. And then it walks you through how you create balance, once again, within the Pentagon of Peak Performance. So all 5 of those areas. And then in the Overcome Army, every 2 weeks, I load new classes. So every 2 weeks, you get a new class. And then every other week, we have a live webinar where we have a Q&A just like this. If you're not ready for that course yet, which it's reasonably priced, it's $49.99 a month for that program. I also have 72 Hours to Peak Performance, which is just the 72-hour course itself. And you can purchase that for $9.99, or you can purchase for $19.99 if you want the one-on-one coaching where we can discuss problems and things like that.
Super helpful, man. We're going to have all your links in the show notes, and I'll have the show note for you guys here in the footer of the show. Also, we'll have in here Jason's 2 books, Overcome and the Trident. We'll have links for those in the show notes as well. Jason, again, I know this sounds so cliche, but you guys who defend our country and serve in our military, I don't take that for granted. Neither do any of us in the community. So thank you so much for your service, and especially on short notice, man. I just texted you like 2 days ago and I'm like, hey, you want to come on the show this week? And I appreciate you making the time with how crazy everything is and giving your heart and soul to us. So thank you so much.
Yeah, but people need it right now. And thankfully we all have a little bit of extra time. Our schedules are a little more open all of a sudden. So, and I'll just say one thing. I've been saying this a lot on my lives. I don't know if any of you guys that are on here are medical professionals, whether you're doctors, nurses, you work in the medical community. I was a member of the special operations community on the front lines fighting against terrorism. But you guys, basically, our medical personnel are now the front lines of this war. And I tell you what, I see the parallel. And now I'm the one that's sitting at home, like praying that you guys are okay and that we beat this thing. And I know we're going to beat it, because that's what we do, man. We overcome. This country has beat so much. We have beat all the odds over 243 years, and we're going to beat this too. But the medical personnel that are out there, you guys are the ones fighting it on the front line. So much love to all of you. And please, if you know anybody that's in the medical community, give them that support, because right now they are the military special operations members that are fighting this.
I love that message, man. I actually heard that on the news, not to the news that I haven't watched for like 10 years. But I like you, I've been watching the news lately, and that I heard that exact analogy of, basically our doctors and nurses, they're the special forces for us right now. And we have to make sure that those folks are healthy, that we keep them, we keep them in good shape. We support them. So I know they appreciate hearing that. But again, Jason, dude, my heart is full right now. Nothing but love for you, man. And again, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Larry, my honor. And hey guys, keep crushing it, man. Being a dad isn't as hard as we think it is. I think sometimes we overthink it. But if you lead yourself and you're positive, they're gonna follow your example.
I love that, man. Jason, thanks again, man.
All right, guys. Thank you.